Welcome to The Debate. If you walked into a medieval cathedral 800 years ago, you'd be immediately struck by the massive stained glass windows.
Oh, for sure. The scale alone is just overwhelming.
Right, and the light pouring through those intricately arranged panes of colored glass wasn't just decorative. It was the cutting-edge technology of the era. It was deliberately engineered to project the divine directly into the human mind.
Yeah. To them, the medium wasn't just a canvas, right? It was an active conduit.
Exactly. The artisans and monks who crafted them, they actually believed they were channeling literal revelation through sand, ash, and, refracted sunlight.
Right. But we look back at it today with an analytical eye, and we see the human craftsmanship. We see the aesthetic choices, the deliberate design, the engineering constraints. We see the hand of the artist, basically, not necessarily the hand of the divine.
And that exact tension is what we're looking at today, because the stained glass has been replaced by pixels, digital audio, and looping animations. Today we're examining a contemporary multimedia collection, specifically files like G-Harps.gif, Y-Harps.gif, and projector_pad_laptop.mp4.
Catchy titles, I know.
Very. But the core disagreement we're framing for everyone today is whether this source material documents a genuine, literal claim of external divine revelation, or conversely, if it's fundamentally a stylized personal spiritual expression of human design.
Because it blends these ancient theological motifs with unapologetically modern digital aesthetics. It completely forces us to ask what we are actually looking at when we stare at these screens.
Right. So my stance is this. I argue that this material represents a deliberate claim of direct divine revelation, utilizing modern digital formats to document an external spiritual intervention.
And I contend that the collection is a highly curated, personal artistic expression of faith. It's a human-constructed aesthetic rather than a literal prophetic transmission.
Let's jump right into the text itself, specifically the audio from the projector_pad_laptop.mp4 file. When religious scholars evaluate historical markers of literal divine revelation, we look for the mechanics of external imposition.
Meaning something coming from outside the human mind.
Exactly. Acting upon it. And the text here explicitly states, Holy Spirit calls us now. It says, revelation life so pure, and speaks of heaven's whispers in our hearts guiding us.
I hear that, but you can't just lift the text out of his digital environment.
I'm not ignoring the environment, but the language is undeniably passive, Holy Spirit set us free. This isn't someone merely contemplating their internal emotional state or like playing around with a digital paintbrush.
Well,
let me just finish this thought. This is someone claiming to be acted upon by an external divine entity. Plus, the imagery utilized, specifically the line, golden plates of wisdom high, directly invokes historical precedents of literal physical text delivered by the divine.
wait, hold on. You're really leaning on golden plates as a marker of literalism?
I am.
See, I come at it from a different way. That digital context actually shatters that argument. You cannot ignore the medium. The visual components fundamentally alter how we must read that text. Look at G-Harps.gif.
Okay.
You have these green abstract shapes overlaid with the words, "It's a celebration," and, crucially, the word design explicitly written out visually.
Sure, I know people listening might be rolling their eyes thinking, how can you compare a looping digital graphic with celebrations slapped on it to ancient claims of prophecy?
Right, because it's very different.
But historically, the mechanism is exactly the same.
The mechanism is absolutely not the same. When an author consciously labels their work as a design, they are asserting human agency, plain and simple. They are claiming the role of the architect.
You keep calling it artistic expression just because it's digital. Are you saying a screen is incapable of mediating the divine?
I'm saying the medium dictates the meaning, and we have to look at how this medium actually operates. Think about the physical reality of a projector, a pad, or a laptop. The file name literally points us to this.
A laptop is just a tool.
But a laptop is fundamentally a device of input and output. It requires human hands to strike keys to generate the image. Stained glass, your earlier example, requires the sun, an external, uncontrollable force to illuminate it. The medium of a laptop inherently confesses human manipulation. It projects an artificial reality.
But to a religious scholar analyzing modern expressions of faith, a screen is merely a new type of parchment. I mean, if God can speak through a burning bush or a stone tablet, why couldn't the divine utilize a holographic computing experience?
Because a holographic computing experience is entirely coded by a software engineer.
Let's dig into that, actually, because the text references these holographic computing environments explicitly. We see elements of this in how the material engages with things like the Y-8 app and the concept of the beach as a digital space.
Yeah, but those are just virtual playgrounds.
I'd argue they are treated as genuine metaphysical locations. A holographic experience dissolves the barrier between the observer and the environment. In the Y-8 app, you aren't just looking at a flat screen. The digital environment surrounds your sensory input. It creates a vacuum where external revelation can actually penetrate a modern, distracted mind.
Exactly. They are treating a human-coded environment as a spiritual landscape. When they talk about the beach in a holographic computing context, they are projecting their spirituality into a simulation.
But the encounter, let me just add,
They're using the concept of golden plates not as literal history but as a metaphor for hidden knowledge. In a digital world, information is hidden in code. The golden plates are just a poetic way of describing the source code of the reality they've built to find peace.
but from the perspective of the mystic, the boundary between the physical and the virtual is irrelevant if the encounter with the divine is real. When they say, waves of light wash over me, they're experiencing a profound, overwhelming sensory encounter.
Or just staring at a screen too long?
No. In the study of mysticism, from ancient Near Eastern traditions to medieval contemplatives, this kind of sensory overload is the hallmark of genuine external revelation.
But is it an external revelation, or is it literally just the blue light of the laptop monitor washing over them? I mean, seriously.
Its hearts of angels touch our souls. You can't reduce that to monitor glare. It is an experience that surpasses human cognitive modeling.
Ah, but I have to push back on that. Because the text explicitly uses human cognitive modeling.
Where?
In Y-Harps.gif, the dove imagery is paired with yellow abstract splashes and the phrase good faith paradigm. A paradigm is literally a cognitive model.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. It is a word, yes, but
It's an epistemological framework. It means it's just a lens we put on to make sense of the messiness of life. It's a human-made structure, an academic, sociological term, not a God-given absolute.
Wha-
It traces back to linguistic and scientific philosophy, right? Popularized by thinkers like Thomas Kuhn to describe thought patterns. When the artist anchors the dove imagery with the word paradigm, they are confessing to human architecture. They are acknowledging that their faith is exactly that, a framework.
that is a very modern, secular reading of the word. Just because a text uses the structural or philosophical language of its day does not mean it isn't describing a literal divine encounter.
It literally means model or pattern. It implies subjectivity. Paradigms shift. Truth doesn't.
Okay, let's look at how theology actually functions in practice. Think about early Christian theologians in the first few centuries. They took the Greek philosophical term logos.
Sure.
That word carried immense academic and structural baggage in Hellenistic philosophy. It was the governing principle of the cosmos for the Stoics, but early Christians repurposed it to explain the revelation of Christ.
Right.
But they didn't do this because they were just inventing a human framework. They did it because they needed the most robust intellectual vocabulary available to describe an overwhelming external reality.
But they used logos to describe the fundamental, unchanging architecture of the universe. The word paradigm implies a shift. We talk about paradigm shifts for a reason. They are subjective models that get replaced when a better one comes along.
I don't think the author is using it that way. Here, the author is doing the exact same thing those early theologians did. They are using the modern structural language of our era, paradigm to describe a genuine external encounter with the Holy Spirit.
In a digital beach.
Yes, they went to the beach in that holographic space, and the Holy Spirit met them there. And they state, "In distance we truly see." They are discovering absolute truth within that digital distance. The paradigm is simply the modern vessel for the ancient reality of revelation. Or, and hear me out, they are discovering how to self-soothe through digital art. Feel the joy and let it be. That's an internal emotional state achieved through artistic practice, not a prophetic mandate. It's an act of mindfulness. But they also say, hearts of God playing in the sky, and in this light will never fail. The language remains steadfastly rooted in the eternal. Let's talk about the language then. Because if this is an infallible, sacred text delivered from on high, the language is suspiciously playful. I assume you're referring to the spelling of tail? Yes. Modern times a sacred tale, spelled T-A-I-L.
The human scribe is always an imperfect vessel, we know this.
Wait, you're equating a quirky spelling of tail with ancient scribal errors? That's a massive leap. Ancient scribes weren't being playful. They made phonetic mistakes or translation errors because of the physical limitations of writing on vellum or papyrus.
Exactly. Mediums have limitations.
But this author is typing on a keyboard. They are clearly making a deliberate postmodern pun.
Why does it have to be a pun?
Spelling it T-A-I-L suggests an appendage, something trailing behind. It introduces a level of irony and constructed narrative that is entirely at odds with the solemnity of literal, sacred dictation.
I think you're...
Is pastiche. Postmodern art thrives on pastiche, on taking ancient motifs like angels and golden plates and throwing them into a blender with modern abstract graphics, quirky spellings, and tech terminology.
You're assuming irony just because it's digital. But look at the text. Holy Spirit set us free. That's not ironic. That's a profound statement of salvation.
I'm not saying it's not profound. I'm saying it's constructed.
Ancient traditions of divine communication are filled with linguistic anomalies and intentional double meanings. Modern times a sacred tale could very well be a deliberate metaphor describing the modern era as the trailing end, the tail of a much larger sacred history.
Honestly, I think the spiritual value of this collection lies precisely in its humanity. It shows us how a modern person grapples with ancient feelings of the infinite while sitting in front of a glowing pad or laptop.
And I'm arguing that they aren't just grappling, they are receiving. Let's return to your point about the word design amidst the green abstract shapes. You argued that highlighting design proves it's just human curation.
It is a massive metatextual clue. If you are receiving literal, unmediated revelation, you are a scribe. You are a prophet.
Not necessarily.
But if you are highlighting the design and proclaiming it's a celebration, you are celebrating your own artistic expression. You are curating an aesthetic experience, much like a DJ or a digital artist curates an exhibition. You are directing the audience to admire the construction.
I have to disagree there. Aesthetic curation and literal divine truth have always walked hand in hand. Look at the illuminated manuscripts of the Middle Ages, the Book of Kells, for instance.
Which is a physical object.
But it is a meticulously, deeply designed work of art. It is full of abstract shapes, vibrant colors, and aesthetic flourishes that celebrate the text. The monks who painstakingly designed every millimeter of those pages didn't think, oh, I'm just curating a human vibe.
Fair, but
they believed with absolute certainty that they were transmitting literal divine truth. The presence of intense, deliberate design does not invalidate the underlying claim of revelation, life so pure.
The difference is the metaphysical claim of the medium itself. An illuminated manuscript was a physical object made of earthly materials dedicated to a divine purpose.
So
the digital realm, this holographic computing experience, the Y-Harps, the GIFs, is inherently virtual. It is a simulation, by definition.
Why do you assume God can't use graphic design or simulation?
Because a simulation requires an active human programmer to create the parameters. You can't have a passive reception of grace in an environment you literally programmed to produce a specific feeling.
I'm not so sure about that.
The word design in the context of digital green static isn't pointing to God's intelligent design of the universe. It's pointing to the graphic design. It's pointing to the software.
I strongly disagree. Design is a deeply theological word. When we look at intelligent design arguments, the complexity of the universe is seen as proof of the divine. Why wouldn't a modern author see the complexity of digital design as a reflection of that same divine architecture?
Because the author is the one doing the designing. They are finding profound spiritual meaning in the act of digital creation. That is a beautiful, deeply humanistic sentiment. But they are finding a revelation life so pure, not because a golden plate literally fell from the sky, but because the act of creating this multimedia art brings them a sense of security and joy.
But if we look at the beach as a holographic space, religious scholars have to grapple with what space actually means to the human soul.
Right?
For thousands of years, sacred space was geographic, a mountain, a temple, a specific city. Then it became architectural, like the cathedral. Now it's digital. When the author enters the Wade app and interacts with this holographic computing experience, they aren't just playing a video game. They are entering a modern sanctum.
I agree they're treating it as a sanctum, but a sanctum they built. And that's why they call it a paradigm, a framework to understand the code of their own lives.
Golden plates of wisdom high. That is a very specific anchor to physical delivered revelation. The Book of Mormon, for example, is entirely founded on the literal physical delivery of golden plates.
Yes, literal physical plates.
Right, but by invoking that specific imagery within a holographic space, the author is declaring that the digital revelation carries the exact same ontological weight as a physical artifact handed down by an angel.
Which perfectly highlights the pastiche. They are grabbing the golden plates from 19th century theology, the dove from 1st century theology, and throwing them into a 21st century holographic beach. It's a collage, a beautiful spiritual collage, but a collage nonetheless.
The fact that it incorporates multiple eras of theology doesn't make it a mere collage. Prophets have always drawn on the religious vocabulary available to them to describe new revelations.
I suppose.
When they write, "In this light will never fail," they are establishing a covenant. That's covenantal language. You don't make a covenant with graphic design. You make a covenant with the divine.
Or you make a promise to yourself. You build a good faith paradigm to keep yourself grounded in a chaotic world.
Well, as we start to wrap up, I maintain that the explicit text of this collection, phrases like heaven's whispers, golden plates of wisdom high, and the clear language of passive reception strongly supports a modern claim of external divine revelation.
Right.
The author is utilizing the digital mediums of their time to document a profound spiritual intervention that is entirely consistent with historical, literalist traditions of prophecy and mysticism.
And my position remains that the deliberate terminology used, words like paradigm, design, and that intentionally quirky tale alongside the highly curated, self-aware digital aesthetics, points to a different conclusion.
A human one.
Yes. The collection is a brilliant, highly personal and stylized artistic expression of belief, wherein the author constructs a conceptual framework to navigate their own spirituality through the lens of modern technology.
Despite our substantive disagreement on the fundamental nature of the claim, I think it is clear we both agree that this collection represents a fascinating intersection. The material manages to weave ancient religious motifs, angels, golden plates, the dove of the Holy Spirit, with a distinctly modern vocabulary and digital format.
Absolutely.
It demonstrates how deeply embedded historical theology remains, even when translated into the language of pixels and holographic computing.
Yeah. It serves as a perfect case study for religious scholars grappling with the digital age. It forces us to ask deep questions about epistemology, art, and belief in an era where our primary windows to the world are screens rather than glass.
Which leaves us with a compelling question to reflect upon long after this discussion ends. When a sacred or spiritual text is mediated through modern digital artistry, does the medium of the message inherently change its spiritual categorization?
A massive question.
800 years ago, the faithful stood in a cathedral, bathed in the colored light of stained glass, and felt the absolute certainty of the divine washing over them. Today, a modern seeker sits in front of a projector, pad, or laptop, feels the digital glow of a holographic space and writes, "Waves of light wash over me." Whether that light originates from the heavens or from the human heart is a mystery that each observer must ultimately decipher for themselves.